I planned this event not just to share a play, but start a discussion in the SFC community, in the Brooklyn community, in the New York community about race and police brutality and how the arts can affect change. And when I was on this journey to preparing this event, I contacted two people that I knew who had great relationships with artists who are about changing the world with theater. And I contacted Clinton Lowe, who's the founding member of Artists for Change, and Sandra A. Daly, who is not only an amazing playwright, but she's a founder of the 48 Hours in Harlem Theater Festival. And the one person that they mentioned when I said, I need a moderator, one person, both of them said, Ebony Noelle Golden. So I'm like, oh my gosh, who's this person? So I went online and looked up a lot of information about her. So as my public speaking students will tell you, if information is vital, you read it from a script. So I'm about to do that. Ebony Noelle Golden is an accomplished artist, poet, director, choreographer. She is the visionary direct leader of Betty's Daughter Art Collaborative and Body Ecology Womanist Performance Project. Now, Betty's Daughter Arts Collaborative is a New York-based cultural arts direct action group. And they inspire, instigate, incite transformation, radical expressiveness, and progressive social change through community-designed, culturally relevant, creative projects. Ebony will be introducing the members of our panel, Kenneth W. Miles, Hannah Seymour, and Garlia Cornelia Jones-Lee. Welcome, Ebony Noelle Golden. And I have mics, not enough. So this will be our mic for everyone on the panel, so just pass that down. This will be your mic, Ebony, or you can put a body mic. Which one do you prefer?
I can use a handheld.
Handheld, we'll do it.
I think I'm an MC.
You're MC Live. MC Live, take my initials. All right.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome. And yeah, let's just take a moment to consider what how we exit out of the play, which is a call to action, through a call to action. And so I am really inspired to consider what we can do collectively and what we can do individually to end this hunting season, right? So it's not perpetual and ongoing and sustained. And so that's where I would like to pick up this conversation, actually. And I'm excited that we have an esteemed panel of artists, of activists and cultural workers who can help to populate this conversation. So I started with the prompt so you can think about what you want to say before I introduce the folks here today to help us have this conversation. So Garlia is an Obie Award-winning theater producer and native Detroiter. Garlia is no stranger to creating spaces for underrepresented artists of color. As a freshman at Indiana University, Garlia founded Black Curtain, a group devoted to Black theater on the Bloomington campus. Of course, there's more information about Garlia in your program, but Garlia, if you could just raise your hand, say hello. Immediately to my left, we have Kenneth W. Miles, a social entrepreneur with a background in digital media and advertising. Ken is a graduate of Vassar College, where he majored in political science. Currently, he has the distinction of serving as the youngest member on Vassar's Board of Trustees. If we could give Kenneth a hand for being with us this evening. Next, we have Hannah Seymour, who is the president and founder of Students Against Racism. She formed the club last spring due to witnessing racism on campus. Afterwards, she talked with her friends and realized that there should be a platform at St. Francis to discuss racism and race relations. Please give Hannah a hand. And before we get into this first question around this call to action that we are left with as the play concludes, I would like to have each of the actors introduce themselves and just say hello to you. Yes, thank you.
Hi, I was the lawyer, Jill Marie Lawrence.
Hello, Stephen Hill, Emanuel.
Hello, I'm Kimawan Rivers, Mary.
Hi, I'm Philip Gregory Burke, and I was Buki.
Hi, Pascal Piquion, I was Jojo.
Hi, Doug Davis. I was a few different people, state trooper and reporter and someone else.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourselves, and thank you for being here. So I really like an interactive panel conversation. If we could get the lights up, that would be great, and we can use one of these microphones to kind of float around the space. Yeah, so here's the thing. It's going to take all of us to end this systemic, institution of violence against Black and brown people. It's a collective conversation. The play is a collective call to action. So I would like to know, the thoughts and ideas that you have in this space around how to make a change, how to end, what can you do individually, and what can we do collectively. So I'm jumping in the deep water here, right, because we don't have all night, and this shit has been going on too long. So let's just start with some solutions, okay? So anyone on the panel, please start us off, and then I'm coming out to the audience soon, not in 20 or 30 minutes.
You can feel
okay?
free to line up here. I have a mic if you want to line up for a viewpoint share.
Well, if you're from St. Francis, you can join Students Against Racism. That's an option for you. But you can also, like the play says, take an action. And that could be as simple as having a conversation with somebody, or like what my club did. We decided to go into classrooms and pass out names of people who have been killed by police brutality to let people know that this is what is the reality for people, and we cannot be silent on this issue.
I'd say words that come to mind are start where you are. I think all of us have access to communities, to networks that can allow us to affect change without needing to get to a certain place or be in a certain capacity. Join your local community board. There are 59 community boards throughout the city, throughout all 5 boroughs. There are usually anywhere between 30 to 40 members of a community board. Know when your local elections are coming up. In Brooklyn, elections are going to start back up in January. In Manhattan, they start up next month. But the city's making an active attempt to recruit younger folks for their community boards. Beyond just liquor licenses and, noise ordinances, there are so many different communities to get involved with, committees, youth and education, arts and culture. You can have an immediate impact, and you can also learn a lot about what's in your own backyard and where resources are going in your own backyard.
I guess I would just say, if you're able to get a group of people to gather together to have any type of a discussion, which is what I've done in the past through either theater or smaller groups. It takes small seeds, and you don't know who you might be affecting with just one small moment.
Anyone from the cast? What are your thoughts about what we can do? Yes. Do we need a mic for recording purposes?
Something really profound happened this summer, and it really, I had never heard a police commissioner say this before until it was the incident that happened in Texas this summer. People want hope. People want to act on hope. And usually when something horrific happens like this, something horrible happens like this, there's a news conference, there's statements being made, then it shuts down. This one police commissioner, black police commissioner, said something that I had never heard before, and many had reacted the same way. He said, "Don't riot. Be a part of the solution. Come and join us." And actually, applications for police positions increased by 300%. That's what people want to hear. People want to hear if they can be a part of the solution. And when he said that, it really permeated. It really made a difference. Most police commissioners don't really say that. They don't say, "Come and join us." And what you want to hear is that if you can be a part of the solution, that's what you want to hear. You want a sense of empowerment. And he said, "Come and join us. Be a part of the solution." I thought that was profound, and I thought it was unprecedented. That was a great thing to say.
Anything else from the cast at this moment? Okay. All right. Let's take some solutions from the folks in the audience. Yes, please.
Hi, I just like to say, I don't think, this is not necessarily a solution, but I do believe that it does start small. That people believe that you need to be on TV, on some sort of humongous panel, like this small thing here is a start. Her starting her club is a start. I think people have this perception that you need to be Malcolm X and Martin Luther King off the bat. And that's not what it is. Simply as joining and becoming a police cadet and joining and trying to make a difference. That's where it starts. It doesn't start by making these big things and overdoing it. It starts at home, and there's so many different things that we can do as people in our space. So I just think that.
What's your name?
Alyssa.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, please. Please say your name.
Hi, I'm Kiana. I came from Jersey, and one of my friends, he's a college student, he started a group called the New Black Power Movement. It's all about learning about police brutality and what happens and empowering young people and just being a part of the solution, basically. For me, I do poetry about stuff like this, so I figure speaking about it and just letting people know is the best way to be a part of the solution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth, I'm coming to you with the question in a moment, okay? So one of the things that in my work and in my life, just as living in a community, I find that oftentimes when issues around police brutality emerge or erupt, that everyone who's having the same feeling huddles up, and it's about safety, and it's about, repairing, recouping from the trauma, recouping from the damage. And recently I started working with an organization called Black and Engaged, and they are going on a countrywide tour to have this conversation around political power, legislative power, and how to use arts and culture and healing as a part of a political framework for social change and social transformation. Okay? And so in our first couple of stops along this tour, what's been emerging is that folks between the ages of 16 to 24 are not really clear about what the legislative process is. So how do you change a law? How do we tell people to get out and vote, right? But do you know what you're voting for? Do you know how your vote will count? What your representative is probably supporting? Do you know their voting record? And so educated, civic awareness is important, right? As a tool, as a strategy, as an immediate way to address systemic change. So I want to go to Kenneth because I know that you know a little bit about this, right? If you could talk some about some of the intricacies of the legislative process and how to maybe amplify or increase engagement among this population, college students of 16 to 24-year-olds who might feel apathetic or like voting for what? Why would I do that? Why would I waste my time with the legislative process?
Yeah, thank you for that. So last night, I was in Brooklyn, actually. I live in Harlem. I was in Brooklyn, and I was volunteering with Color of Change. I don't know if you're familiar with colorofchange.org. It's the oldest online digital racial justice organization in the country. It was founded by Van Jones in the wake of Katrina. Folks felt like, you know what, this isn't enough. Like, we need accountability. We need Black Lives to matter. We need people to hear us. And so Van and a co-founder started the organization. And so fast forward, several campaigns, hundreds of thousands of people who have signed on to some of these petitions, really centered on how do you ensure that Black lives are at the forefront of your policy decisions? How do you get everyday folks to know how X affects Y and how it comes down to your life? So in the context of last night, we were getting out the vote for Floridians because that's one of the key swing states. And we were using a new mobile platform. So you're able to message out through text messaging folks who are registered voters who you can then identify as African American and say, a certain candidate has policies that are promoting stop and frisk, and that adversely affects Black communities. Are you going to support this person? And you get that information. It allows folks to be reached where they are, but also beyond that, it's this sense of some of the responses, there were some folks that were saying, I'm not going to vote. Why? I could tell you to go Google folks that say why you should vote in this election, but at the end of the day, it comes down to understanding why engagement matters. And arts particularly as a platform for engagement is critical. I know friends that work with Arts for Amnesty International, and they've had a historic letter writing campaign where every year they would encourage folks to write a letter. And they tried something new last year. So a friend of mine, Marvin Bing, he went out and he decided to collaborate with artists. So you're not just hearing about a letter, hearing about someone's story of police brutality or hearing about someone's wrongful incarceration, but you're visualizing it. You're using the medium that you have accessible to you through artists to really see and paint a picture of what this experience is like. As a result, engagement went up. The number of letters they were able to create, they were able to draft went up. And there's a key intersection between the arts and engagement. And I think that's why these conversations matter. That's why understanding locally how you take small policies, how you can craft laws, and then how you can use the arts to infuse a pathway forward to do that, that's critical.
Thank you.
Pin here.
Sure, of course.
Kenneth, what you said, I can't breathe with all the information you gave. I'm like, oh my God! And like these college students, they work full-time jobs, half of them.
Or two of them.
They have a full load of classes. They're like, one more test? Really? One more homework? What? So I want a little peek into your experience as a student advisor and how, similar to Hannah, you got involved with activism. Because, Hannah, you're an activist. That's it, okay? You're an SFC student. You're an activist. So he's at this place in his life where he's post-college in a big way, and he's talking about, and all of you guys are like, holy cow, dude, that's like cool. Can I watch you on TV? I'm like, applaud you and go home and do nothing. Talk to us about your experience when you're at Vassar so that Hannah doesn't seem like an anomaly, because there are other people out there doing what Hannah is doing.
Totally. So Vassar College, it's a liberal arts school. It's located in Poughkeepsie, New York. Undergraduate enrollment is roughly 2,500 students. And I'll never forget, my next door neighbor went to Temple University in Philly. And I got a letter. They had a black student union on campus. And so I got a letter when I got accepted to Vassar, and it said, "Welcome to Vassar." And I was so proud. I found out about it because I was on the bus, and a friend of mine said we compared schools, and she said she was applying to Vassar. I hadn't heard of it. And so then I said, if she could get in, I could get in. She happened to be a young white woman and who we were grade school friends. And then I told everyone, so I added it to the list. And then a chorus member, a friend of mine, Tiffany, she was like, "Oh, I saw Vassar in Black Enterprise," and I was like, "Oh, wow, then definitely, top schools for African Americans." Part of that list was later ranked on job placement. And so, long story short, I say all this to say, when I got accepted into Vassar, I got a note from the president of the Black Student Union, and I showed it to my next door neighbor. I was so proud, and she goes, "There aren't many black people at Vassar." And then I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Because if there were lots of black people at Vassar, then they probably wouldn't be writing individual notes to every single black student that got accepted." Fast forward, during my time at Vassar, I was fortunate to have, I think a lot of my engagement and my involvement after Vassar came from what the institution did for me during the time there. And I was blessed to have black alums who historically had fought to get Africana studies established, who had fought to ensure that a legacy of black contributions were not lost and were shared across generations. I've met some of the most amazing mentors through that network of people. And at the end of the day, I had recently graduated, and for me, it came when I had two of those mentors who graduated in the 70s who said, "We've been co-chairing the Black Alumni Association for like 10 years. They were like, we're holding this torch, but our fingers are starting to get crispy." And so at the end of the day, I was like, I just graduated. What was the risk of me saying yes to an opportunity to do what I love, which is connecting folks, let alone across several generations, in an attempt to make things better for the experiences of the students who will come after. And that's really what set me up for kind of my involvement. People have these expectations of what it means when you say you're a trustee of any institution. I can tell you I'm the youngest and I'm the brokest. And the reality is, though, a lot of my experiences have led me to create and add and contribute based on who I am naturally. And I think that how you kind of come into an organization, how you form an organization, how you lead an organization, I think authenticity matters. I think ensuring that the communities that want that need to be heard, that resonates through authenticity, keeping it 100, whatever you want to call it. And that for me started from seeing mentors of mine, peers of mine, who were leading this charge and saying there's a way forward through just volunteering. And lastly, one of those mentors said, and this has stuck with me, the concept of a susu. I think it was so important to have, all these cultural elements infused into the play we just watched. But the reality is, for those of you who aren't familiar with a susu, the idea is it's a pot. It's kind of a community pot, a family pot. It's actually written into law in New York City that those are outlawed. But anyway, so the idea is I have $10, but if I get 10 friends together, then all of a sudden, we're dealing with $100. And so if you then allocate that $100 to someone month to month with the presumption that you're going to contribute going forward and pass it along, then you can do more with that $100 than you could with that 10. And you're going to support one another, and you're going to be able to create something, what have you, and they do this at scale, but it's this, she kept saying that, like, we need to create more susus. We need to have more trust in our communities. And also, and this will be my last point, but there are two ways to give back. There's financial equity, but there's also sweat equity. And I can tell you straight up that the doors and the opportunities I've gotten have been from raising my hand to volunteer, to contribute at the ground level, because that will always provide a way in. And then once you kick open that door, the world is yours. James Brown, I don't need nobody to get me nothing. Open up the door and I'll get it myself.
Thank you. So I want to go back out to the audience and talk about digital engagement and what you're doing with your social media. How are you using Twitter? How are you using Instagram, Tumblr, Snapchat to explore issues, or at least follow your representatives and your local community board online? Is anybody engaging in what some folks call social media activism, or talking about political issues via your social media presence? Anybody in the audience? Okay, can we hear from, how are you using social media to talk about or to explore the issues?
It's really just signing a number of petitions.
It's on.
Yeah, I have friends that, for instance, a friend sent me a petition, not a racial issue, but think about the extinction of eastern gorillas. And usually when you're on one, when you sign one petition, you get asked to sign a number of others. In fact, in the moment when you sign one, another pops up. And they're across the board, all sorts of environmental issues, social issues, everything. So, I mean, that's the way I do it. Another thing, and then this is not social media, but I guess I'll just toot a horn as a teacher. I think it's important, as a teacher, I really start each semester with emphasizing this group of people here in my English class. We are a community. We are a little community. And just from a point of view of creating a better atmosphere in teaching writing or guiding writers, I say writing is not easy. And it takes trust to be able to share your work with somebody else. And I think that kind of building of trust can extend beyond that.
Beyond writing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if the students in a classroom feel they can trust each other, then that can grow into students passing each other in the hallway, trusting each other, and students at large. I mean, one of the things about St. Francis College, it's a small school. Like we talked about, you mentioned Vassar. I also teach at BMCC. That school is 10 times bigger than this. It is much easier to build community here. I see students in the hallways that I had 4 years ago. There's one fellow working up in the booth that I had 4 years ago. I remember them, they remember me. And I'm not saying this for myself, it's true for many of the teachers here. I think we're fortunate. And I think we're fortunate, this happens to be the week of St. Francis of Assisi. We can learn a lot from that spiritual dimension and that community dimension that the Franciscans offer. And again, this is not me trying to sell St. Francis College. It's just, I think there is a great opportunity at this school.
We have a hand in the back.
Come on down. The question was how we use our social media, right?
Indeed, yes.
Okay. So I'm from DC, and my name is Terrace Pittman. I'm from DC, and a lot of my friends are really into like activism and stuff. And over the summer, I don't know if you watched on the news a lot of the protests that were going on in the major cities. I participated in 3 of them in DC. We marched from the Department of Justice to the White House. We marched from Union Station through the bad neighborhoods in Southeast DC. And through social media is how we found out about it. Like, I reposted stuff like, come meet me here and let's go. And like 10 or 12 of my friends and 1,000 other people like marched all through the city on the news, got interviewed. And I think, yeah, that's how I did it.
Thank you. So I'll come to you. I'll come to you next. In terms of online and digital activism, there is, if you haven't checked it out, the Movement for Black Lives has recently released a digital platform with all of their policy demands, and you know we're getting ready to vote for president, right? So this idea of using, you know, the digital space to really understand what the demands for progressive organizations are and how to engage that is something that I think is worth our while. Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, so the size of your school should not stop you. I was at a big 10 school in a predominantly white school, and so then I said, well, there's no black, you know, plays, and there's like 5 black, you know, there were a few black students in the theater department, and so I just kind of said, okay, who wants to do this play, and it started with just a straight play, and then it turned into us doing every, you know, semester we would do a play that included poems and scenes, and it was always about Black history, and then it turned into HIV/AIDS work, and then we went from the school to different classrooms, and then out in the town, but it was just one small thing. It was just me seeing a few other, you know, black students in a predominantly white school and saying, well, we can try and, you know, show that we do want to, you know, we do want to do plays that tell our stories, and this has kind of been like the journey that I moved here and that, you know, and I was in college before when Facebook just started. So when I was in college, you know, the Facebook posts and things were extremely new. I think the photos like had just come. No one really did that. I'm going to put an age on myself, but you know, so if we had Twitter and all these things when I was doing this, that would have been so much. So, but I think, you know, it does, you know, starting small is key. When you were talking about you went into classrooms, that's huge, because, you know, you can meet one other student who might be in the city, and you can just partner and build. You just like you were saying, you say I'm here, and then other people will say, oh, let's meet, you know. And it's funny because the play at my series last night was called Susu. So when you said that, I'm like, I know what a Susu is, you know. So anyway.
So a couple of years ago, after the murder of Trayvon Martin, folks that in Harlem came together and decided that something needed to happen. And we've talked about, you know, the idea of artists as activists. And I'm a part of that school of thought. Nina Simone, James Baldwin, Audre Lorde, Ntozake Shange, and folks that really use the creative practice as a way to make things change, right? To support change and transformation, and really to speak truth to power. True, and to continue to make that present, right? And so I would like to ask Stephen, because Stephen was there at the initial kind of founding meeting with Clinton and Jenny and Russell at the outset of Artists for Change NYC, which is a collective that still kind of working in some ways, but was really, really called together and galvanized by the death of Trey. Is it Trayvon? No, it's not Trey. Mike Brown. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's saying something. It's all kind of blending together. But I would love, Stephen, if you could talk about your work in theater, on screen, in community, that really affirms and grounds this idea of artists as activist or transformative agent.
I just want to say I get in where I fit in. You know, there's work that we do that pays really well that may not have anything to do with any activism, and then you get stuff like this and you show up even though you don't get paid. You know, you just show up and you lend a hand. I wanted to speak on the whole social media piece for a second.
Yes.
So I went to Hampton University, small school. I don't know how small this school is, but I think we had about 5,000 students there. Predominantly, pretty much all black school. High school, I went to Willingboro High down in South Jersey. 85, 90% black as well. So I've always been in these kind of like little pockets of like black utopia. So I look out and I see like a pretty diverse crowd, which is cool. But for me, what I do with social media, even though probably most of my friends kind of land in a black place unless they're in the industry, and then, you know, I got like Canadians that I'm cool with now, you know. So, but I like to go into topics and not just read the article. The first thing I do is I go straight to the comments, you know, and I think that racism is grown in the dark, right? So all of these racist cops, they're getting that ideology from somewhere. It was passed down to them somewhere along their lineage. And I think we can get a snapshot into that through social media in a way that like no other generation has ever had before. So that guy that can just be racist and say whatever he wants is now on Front Street to like millions of people. So I think that one of the things that we can do is to just check each other. Like, if you see that dude, like, I know he might not want to hear it from me because it's just going to be a back and forth, right? But if you are not racist and you know your friend is lighting up the internet with a lot of racist banter, check that dude. Like, check that girl, you know? Like, definitely come to them and say, yo, what are you talking about? Like, where are you getting these ideas from? Because it's being passed down to them. So if we could cut the head off of the people that are trying to pass it down, I think we'll eventually grow out of this. And I think that that's kind of what the internet is right now. It's just like putting it all out there for us to see for the first time. And so eventually I think the dust will settle. But we have to check it, though.
So you're hopeful?
I'm sometimes hopeful. I'm sometimes angry.
Someone else from the cast, do you feel like you are activating your work as an actor or in any other medium that you might work in as a tool for or a process of thinking about transformation? Anyone else want to say something from the cast? We can pass the mic down to you. I'm sorry? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Carlia, if you could pass her.
Well, I'm struck by the discussion about doing service. I mean, I work in education and disability rights advocacy, and I think that's something that, you know, especially young people that are here still, it's really important to make sure that you set aside some portion, some time of your life to serve. And, you know, someone stated really well earlier on, it doesn't have to be something that's necessarily a big project or a big organization. There are so many different areas in the community where there is need. And it may not seem a necessarily direct link to what is happening with police brutality, but the fact is, a lot of the issues that exist in the community are being really increased and doubled because they don't have the supports, because people are not aware. And the idea of serving in whatever way that you can, in whatever talent that you have, whatever you like to do, trust and believe there is an area of service that you can do what you want to do or like to do, whether it is even something as simple as cooking or showing up or listening. Because I think, when you talk to people, and I talk to people all day long, you get a real sense that, people all want the same things. And I think people just have a lot of fears. And I think a lot of what takes place today in terms of attitudes of racism, and it really has a lot to do with ignorance of another person's life, ignorance of being able to walk in someone else's shoes. I think, oddly enough, we are still very disconnected. Social media in a lot of ways has opened things up, in a lot of ways have really created this lack of human connectedness between people. And I just, as you're younger and as you are, growing in your careers, I just want to say service. It's important. Serve your community, and you will build your community. You build your community, you build your community awareness. You build a community awareness, you build a community responsibility, a sense of accountability to the person next to you. You build that, then you're building a sense of awareness of outside communities, and that's how you grow. Yes, it doesn't take a lot, but you start where you are, and you do what you can.
I'd like to go to the folks waiting to speak.
My name is...
It's on.
Hi, my name is Zaire. I just wanted to touch on the mental health aspect of what's going on right now. If we think about it, like social media, it's great. Like, we can use it to be activists, but it's also a form of desensitizing us. And I just don't want us to get misconstrued, because the other day I was talking to my friend and I was like, we're doing a rally with Eric Garner's mother. And she was like, was that the one that got killed with the Skittles? I'm like, no, that's the one that got choked. And she was like, oh, I thought that was the one that got shot 50 times. Like, it's just like the fact that we're like, no, it's the other guy. No, it's the other one that got killed this way. And the fact that this keeps happening over and over and over again. I just want us to not get desensitized by what the police are doing to our Black and brown communities. And people who aren't of color, I really want you to understand, like, this is something hard that we're going through. Like, this is really not easy. And when I was younger, I never really understood, like, what my mother and my grandmother would tell me how it was. And now, now that I'm going through it, it really puts life in a different perspective. And that's just all I wanted to say.
Yes, I would like to hear from you. Yes. Please, yes.
Hello, my name is Thomas. I'm not leaving. So anyway, all right. So every day when I go on social media, sometimes I see these posts up, and then I see these things like, yo, I don't like black people or anything. And I'm like, who is this person and what are they saying? And one time I see my friend post something, and she's trying to be funny or something, like she doesn't mean it. But then I see racist slurs in it and everything. I'm just like, I contacted her, and we met up with each other, and I said, what are you thinking? Do you even see the message that's being portrayed in this digital content right here? And then I showed her, and I said, when you post something, especially if it's racist, you can't take it back. It's up there forever. Pause before you post.
Hashtag.
Yes. Hashtag.
Hashtag pause before you post.
That's what I like about social media so much. is that it, you know, people just get real comfortable, you know, and they forget that people are watching, because social media, and please excuse me for talking to a bunch of college students about social media, when I don't even have a Snapchat yet.
I don't have Snapchat either.
Oh, okay, cool. It's just too much. I can't keep up. But I want to say that, you know, it does keep us in bubbles, right? So it's like you like something, and next thing you know, that's all. The only ad you see for months is like this one pair of shoes. Like, damn, I already bought the damn shoes. Stop showing me the ad, you know. But it's like they keep us in these little think pods of like everybody kind of thinking the same thing. So I wonder sometimes, like, damn, do white people see all of these killings the way I'm seeing these killings? I don't know, right? But I like when people get comfortable and they say what they want to say. And I would say, I try not to shame people for what they're saying. I really want to use that as an opportunity to really talk to them, you know, because if you just like, oh, you're a racist, they just go back into hiding and they just grow their racism again. You know what I mean? But if they're like actually like run into somebody that will talk to them, I'm not gonna go as far as that one black guy that like hangs out with the Ku Klux Klan dudes and all. Like, I'm not gonna do that, but I will have a conversation with a dude on a thread.
So something that to echo that point,
So candid.
I was just reading an article yesterday, speaking to the social media piece. Some of the top tech companies literally hire rocket scientists, right, to work on their platforms, and top psychologists. A friend of mine is a psychology professor at a top university, and his peer group are all getting hired out by some of Silicon Valley's top companies. And the reason for that is habit formation, right? Like, there's money to be made in like you playing, you know, whatever Farmville back in the day, or whatever gaming is happening now. Like, genuinely, that's the sweet spot, right? And so when you think about who's designing these applications, there's a whole other conversation to be had for diversity on that front as well, to have a representation so that things, you know, scientists will argue, well, it's just we're in the business of creating better habits, or habits, but habits come with a connotation, right? And if you don't see yourself, if you're not part of the development process, then there's a good likelihood that your framework of thinking may be left out. And what does that mean for the communities who are then, you know, being introduced to these habits? And that's something to be mindful about. I also just, you know, I think there's something to be said for, it's important when you feel the energy and you feel like you can exert that energy to call that huddle and say, listen, I saw you say XYZ on social media, let's meet up, let's have this discussion. But also be mindful of when you feel like it may become a point of exertion, or it may become a point of exhaustion, and listen to that. Sometimes folks gotta call their own huddles. And I think that just being mindful of that, and to the sister who just bounced, but like, you know, a friend of mine created the Black Joy Project, Cleaver Cruz, and it came from just this desire to see happiness. Like, so he just started taking pictures, and then he started captioning the pictures, and now it's getting, you know, picked up across social media. But it really just started from a place of saying, I love me, I love us, let's showcase that. And again, something that's starting small and then scaling. But yeah.
I like what you did. Those huddles, as you put it, it's a really healthy thing. But you got to remember, racism is taught. I just got back from the Caribbean. I spent some days taking my mom back. And I can tell you, some of the days when I was in the British Virgin Islands, picking up my niece from school, 4 years old. She goes to a private school, maybe 20 kids, 3 black children. And when I get there, she loves her Uncle Al, of course. I get there, she runs past her mom to my arms, because she calls him huggy, what's he called? Huggy kisses or something like that. Anyway, I picked her up, and all the kids gather around me because I'm 6'3.5". Everybody wants a hug and a lift up as well. The point is, if you saw me like a Goliath amongst all these children, you would never know anything about racism. It's taught. Start with families, That's why huddles are important, because if people start making choices, it is possible. I like what you said about hope. But if people are making some sort of effective change in their households about other children that don't look like them, then it could be something that could possibly be a lot less of an issue. Because those same people become adults. Those adults, at some point in their lifetime, they become people making decisions based on what they were taught, whether it's social, and if they get it from social media or some other resource that's not what their family or their parents have taught them from a value system, then they too can say, listen, you're my child, I know what you see and I know what you're hearing, but this is not how it goes. That's where responsibilities of parenting come in to be a very important thing. But just remember, racism is taught. If we get them early and maintain a certain value system, yes at home, yes in education, because teachers will also have an effect on that, then it could be something that would at some point be less of an issue. I think police need better education and need better accountability, because again, if you think about it, as a black man, I am concerned, but I will tell you this, of all the cops, all of them are not doing it. There are cops that are ashamed of what's going on, if you listen to certain conversations, right? And one last thing, as far as knowing what people think about you, Chris Rock has a piece about that. You might want to check it out on YouTube. It is funny. It made me think twice about what you just said, because I used to think that way as well. That's all.
So, I'm standing here and I am listening and enjoying the conversation, and also feeling, like I want to speak some dissent. That's what I do. I speak dissent often. And there are folks who are frontline activists, there are folks who are organizers, there are folks who are working through a more radical lens that would say abolish prisons, abolish the system of police. They are set up and organized around systemic racist, ideology, and never were really put in place to make us feel safe, especially black and brown folks. If we look at the origins of prison and look at the origins of the institution of mass incarceration, it comes directly, there's no gap in it, from the abolishing of slavery, so-called abolishing of slavery, and the beginning of what we call the prison industrial complex. So there are folks who are like, okay, yeah, there might be some good cops, but the institution called the police is totally, needs to be uprooted, deconstructed, reconstituted, right? And so I want to leave space in the conversation for dissent. It's uncomfortable to think about living in a world where the prison industrial complex doesn't exist, but that's actually something that I think about all the time, right? And it's uncomfortable to think about living in a world where communities determine what safety looks like and what justice looks like, instead of folks superimposing that on them, right? And I think about that all the time. It's also, something that is really explored in the play is this idea of, a spiritual kind of understanding of this has happened before, or I'm not crazy because I'm having this feeling in my body. My ancestors are speaking to me. Also something I think about a lot as well. So there are some ways in which, the play deals with the kind of like tension between, oh yeah, I can just get dressed and go out and be black and fresh in the world and go to the party, and the real systemic issues that are at play. So I would love to just, take a moment for dissent and a moment for folks to speak that are, not on the bandwagon of, yeah, let's just teach the police how to be nice and blah, 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 I think we need a multi-tiered strategy, so I'm not saying we don't need that, but I want to offer space before we kind of continue on the kind of where the trajectory we've been on, to do a hard stop and a departure. Who's on this? Who's not on the bandwagon?
one thing that we've talked a little bit about is accountability for policing. But I think a conversation that it's a nice word to throw out, but what does that look like, right? And I can tell you firsthand in the instance of my institution where I went to college, over the summer and really over the past 6 months, there's been a conversation around reforming and instituting anti-bias, anti-racist training for security forces. And the reason for that is there were instances on campus that were reported, black students that were coming and saying, you know, if I feel as though I've been, you know, unjustly targeted, what approach do I have? And so we talk about, you know, what accountability looks like. It's a difficult but necessary conversation to have. And I guess my pushback is saying, you know, there are action steps. Like what happened was we fortunately had an entity, Black Alumni Association, and leveraging different networks at different layers of a conversation. So recognizing that there are allies and black trustees, you know, historically, how do you reach out to those folks? How do you have a meeting with, you know, the president of the institution, the senior administrators of the institution, for the express purpose of saying, we don't want this to happen again. And also, we want to put a timetable on this, because sometimes, you know, we just put it out into the land of someday. Well, when you've got freshmen that are going to start classes in August, you want to make sure that there's a policy in place by August. And so you have to, I think it's important to start with an end goal and to reverse engineer that. How do you get what you want? Design it. And I think we need to talk more about design as it relates to outcome. Also, this Friday, Ava DuVernay's new film, 13th. If you have Netflix, go watch it. If you don't have Netflix, grab someone's account who has Netflix and go watch it, because it really does explore this notion of the historical impact of slavery, prisons, incarceration, mass incarcerations, and understanding how we got from there to here in a beautifully told story, from what I understand from friends who have seen it. And it's important to have those visuals. It's important to understand there's a way forward, and people are showing us that. That's what I'm going to say.
Once again, art affecting change and education and enlightenment.
Absolutely.
Cassandra, you want
One moment. Anyone else up here want to speak to that in terms of dissent? Yeah.
I got a dissent. So I'm sorry, Miss. I know you.
We're coming to you.
Next.
I got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Cool. My bad, Abby. So for me, I am not on the bandwagon, and I think that a lot of times the bandwagon is actually the rally. Right. It gives people a sense of feeling like they did something, right? And a lot of you see somebody on Facebook Live get shot, it stirs your emotions, and we act out of emotion. But emotion cannot be sustained in that way. So after you feel like you did something, you went and you literally went to Union Square and you walked around in circles a few times. Then you go home, you be like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you go and you get a burger and you go to sleep, right? I think that's the bandwagon, right? And that's like the bag of tricks. So and I have friends that are like, yo, I ain't doing no more marching, right? So I tell them still like, maybe you should still show up, because the good thing about the rally is you will talk to people at rallies that are organized in other ways, right? So you can get something out of it. But I'm just saying, if don't diffuse your energy, your emotional energy at a rally. Take that energy and really do something with it. I tend to, as an actor, I take that energy, okay, and I store that away, and then I'll do a film or a short film or something that deals with police brutality or whatever, and I put it all on the table then, and then it reaches a couple thousand people. I have something on Aspire right now, so that's at least reaching 100,000 people. You know, so I feel like that's my way to elicit change. But I feel like the bandwagon a lot of the times is the rally, and it just gives people a feeling of I did something. But ask yourself when you get home, like, did I really do something, or did I just walk around and chant?
Thank you. Yes.
And I totally agree with you about the bandwagon. And I want to encourage people after the rally, you plan step 2. Sign the petition. Find out who your legislatures are. Find out groups that you can connect with. I'm very heartened to know a few New Yorkers of color and white who basically, whatever their levels of profession and age, and I know that people, the students here, you know, you're working 2 and 3 jobs and all of that. When you see in the course of walking around to your jobs, out in the streets, and you see a citizen being confronted by the police, stand there and watch. And I'm very, very encouraged to know New Yorkers who do that. That is your right to stand there and watch. That has its own effect. And that's something. That's a little something. That's participation in its own way. And that's part of what we have to do to attend to this enormous structural problem. So,
Garlia, I wasn't at this year's 48 Hours in Harlem. Actually, how much time do we have? I know 5 minutes, okay. Well, we're going to end on this artist as activist note. And so, Garlia, I'm coming to you to talk about 48 Hours. And specifically, 48, what is 48 Hours in Harlem? And I wasn't there this year, but I've been there for the last 2 or 3 years. And what I've noticed is an uptick in the overt political content being explored by directors and playwrights and actors through this medium. And in keeping with the theme of arts, activism, and arts for transformation, I would love to hear you, if we could pass the microphone down to Garlia, I would love to hear you talk about like this format, you know, of the play festival, of the 48-hour play festival, and what you've seen the political shifts to be, or the shifts in the hearts and minds of people, both in the audience and on the creative side, as it relates to what's going on in the world and in the community and in New York.
Okay. Well, it is a lot, and I speak for 6 people because we are a group. So unlike a lot of theater companies that have like a head and people underneath, we are 6 people, and so we create this as like a core. And so we ask 6 actors, we ask 6 playwrights, 6 directors, and 8 teen actors every year. So that's 6 casts of 3. That we choose 6 black plays, known plays, and then the playwrights will then recreate, or they'll use those plays as an inspiration for a new 10-minute play. We have a few alums here, both actors, directors, and playwrights, and we do this within 2 days. So we meet everyone as a stranger, and then the plays are written in one evening, and there's rehearsal on Saturday, and then Sunday is tech dress show, and it's insane. But they've been intense. Yes. it is intense for everybody because we don't sleep either. And so, but the thing that always ends that really makes it so beautiful that I think everyone feels all this energy are the stories that come out. And I would say we started in 2011, and so Trayvon Martin was in 2012. So after that, I believe in 2012, we sometimes it's so powerful. It's just comfortable. The new work that comes, and you know, it has been a way for playwrights to just speak what's been what's been going on, and I mean, it's something that you for sure have to experience, but the plays I think are good new pieces that kind of tell the stories of what is going on now. I mean,
Can I volunteer?
Yeah.
There's a copy. They published
We
a
did.
collection from which year?
So we're gonna be
The one that was published is
The one
currently
that's out now is from the first 2 years.
There's a copy of that in the library. If you want to read the collection of plays, you can look under my name, Professor Colimon-Christopher, and you could take a look at some of the plays. I purchased it for the library, so you guys can take a look at it.
Yes.
And having participated in this year with 48 Hours in Harlem, which was it's a privilege and a joy to work at the National Black Theater, first of all. One of the plays that I was part of was called Assembly, written by Cord Tuttle and directed by Elizabeth Van Dyke. And that play was about how we were, me and my two other fellow actors, we were three people of color who ushered in the black and brown bodies who have been murdered by police brutality. We ushered them into the afterlife so the spirits can guide them and watch over them. But we were dealing with, our individual characters were dealing with a lot of trouble in our personal lives, because one line in the play was, if we are not clean, she will not come. So whatever deity you believe, and we were dealing, all three of our characters in the span of the 10-minute play, got to showcase what the things that we were struggling with, and how we knew that while we were struggling with these things on earth, we had to make ourselves clean for the passage into the afterlife of the newest black and brown recipients of police brutality. And at the time, it was Alton Sterling, Corinne Gaines, and oh my God, I forgot the third one. Did I say? Philando Castile. So those were the three names at the time.
That had just occurred.
And it
pretty
literally
much
just occurred, yeah.
Right before. Yeah. Yeah, I would, I lost my train of thought.
So we're actually at time, and I would like, before we start moving, for everyone to bring one word into your mind, into your heart, based on what you've experienced this evening from the conversation and from the reading of the play. So one word. Everyone have their word? That's kind of a one-word report back, right? From what we've experienced this evening. Everyone have their one word? Yeah?
Tizoiseau.
So on the count of three, we're all going to say our one word together. One. Okay, and it's going to be like using your full voice, okay? Speech students. 1, 2, 3.
Tizoiseau.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.